Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Have we got a treat for you today? We are going to cover the Presidential Records Act of 1978. The very thing that Donald Trump says he has this right to. So we're going to go through it and break it down, and then you can decide whether you believe Donald Trump is in the right or the wrong. And with us today is Jeremy Baker. Hello, Jeremy. How are you doing today?
What's going on? Actually, I was just printing out the Presidential Records Act while you're doing your intro so I can reference it. But yeah, this is exciting because, this is like his main defense. And we're going to prove that his defense is complete and utter bullshit using critical thinking and common sense. And the internet. It's Google's an amazing tool. You guys should try it out one time.
Yes. So we're going to start off with the Meet the Press moment where he was kind of talking about this. And once everybody sees this, we're actually going to go into the PRA. So here we go. Here is Meet the Press segment.
The Attorney General appointed a special counsel to investigate you, President Biden, and President Biden's son, Hunter, who was also indicted today. But I do want to
President Biden does not fall within the Presidential Records Act. And frankly, you don't ever hear anything about the special counsel. But they gave me this deranged person named Jack Smith. He's a deranged lunatic. I fall within the Presidential Records Act. It's very simple. It's a civil thing. In fact, the New York Times, of all institutions, did a story. And it was headlined, please, Mr. President, could we take a look at the documents? And they said in the story that the only way you can get documents from a president is if you go there and say, please, because this is civil. And they won't even have a lawsuit. They may have a civil lawsuit at most, but they probably don't even have a civil lawsuit.
Wow.
I know. And
lots
there's a lot of other
there.
Huh?
Lots to unpack there.
Yes. And we're going to break that all down. So, let's get into it and all that. The first thing I'm going to bring up is from the National Archives, Presidential Records Act, PRA of 1978. It governs the official records of presidents and vice presidents, and vice presidents. I'll say it one more time. Presidents and vice presidents.
It's right there in the first line, second line.
That were created or received after January 20th, 1981. And basically what it does is it changes the legal ownership of the official records of the president from private to public. So make note here, it says 44 USC, and that little funny symbol, that means section 2201 through 2209. So what we are going to do is go to Title 44, Chapter 22 of the Presidential Records, sections 2201 through 2209. And this is what we are going to break down and read for you. And we're going to start with definitions because definitions is really, really important, especially with the things that the president says. Number 45 president, the former guy, says, as used in this chapter, the term documentary material means all books, correspondence, memorandum, documents, papers, pamphlets, works of art, models, pictures, photographs, plats, mats, films, and motion pictures, including but not limited to audio and visual records or other electronic or mechanical recordations, whether in analog, digital, or any other form.
That is pretty much the cover is about, everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes. Now that's what documentary material means. Now, the term presidential records means documentary materials or any reasonably segregable portion thereof created or received by the president's immediate staff, or a unit or individual of the executive office of the president whose function is to advise or assist the president in the course of conducting activities which relate to or have an effect upon the carrying out of the constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. Wow.
Yeah. And I think what the problem is I honestly think that this guy has gone his whole life trying to own things and keep things and just I don't think he understands the concept that when he was president, he was a government employee and that everything he did throughout that was government owned stuff. He doesn't understand it. And let's just mention that even if like the archivist, you have to get in writing permission in writing from the archivist to take anything home considered personal.
And we're going to
you're getting to that. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay. That's okay. So, such term A includes any documentary materials relating to the political activities of the president or members of the president's staff, but only if such activities relate to, now remember, this is very important, but only if such activities relate to or have a direct effect upon the carrying out of the constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president, but does not include any documentary materials that are official records of an agency as defined in section 552E of Title V United States Code, personal records, stocks of publications and stationery, extra copies of documents produced only for convenience of reference when such copies are clearly so identified. Then it goes
exactly
right. Then it goes to 3. The term personal records mean all documentary materials or any reasonably segregable portion thereof of a purely private or non-public character which do not relate to or have an effect, or have an effect upon the carrying out of the constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. Such term includes, these are the things that do not fall under the Presidential Records Act: diaries, journals, or other personal notes serving as the function equivalent of a journal diary which are not prepared or utilized for or circulated or communicated in the course of transacting government business. So if it has anything to do with the government, it's not personal. Okay?
It's odd. I see that, classified documents aren't listed under things that are acceptable as personal items.
Correct. Materials relating to private political associations and having no relation to or direct effect upon the carrying out of constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. Materials relating exclusively to the president's own election to the office of the presidency, and materials directly relating to the election of a particular individual or individuals to federal, state, or local office, which have no relation to or direct effect upon the carrying out of constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. Okay? So if it has to do with our government and official acts, it falls under presidential records, period.
So, yeah, I'd like to point out one of the highlights, or the one I have is obviously a lot less detailed than yours because your brain is a lot bigger than mine.
Well, I'm directly in the United States Code, so this is the code. This is what they all have to go by. And you might find a summary out there. And again, people, when they summarize, they leave out key points.
Well, no, this is directly from the Presidential Records Act. I got it off the proper website.
Right.
So the one I like to point out, there's 2 I really like to point out. One is that it requires the president and his staff take all practical steps to file personal records.
Yes.
Separately from presidential records.
Correct.
Meaning, like it says in the term archivist. Yeah, the archivist has to approve anything you want to take home in writing.
Well, and we're going to get to that.
Am I getting my head? See, you're getting me all hyped up. All
I
right,
know. I know.
I'm just going to shut
exciting.
up until you get through this, and then we'll go ahead and get into
All
it.
right. That's all right. No, it's good to jump in. It's good to jump in.
This stuff gets me so pissed off. Like, it's just so blatantly obvious that
I know. It's going to be much more blatantly obvious. Wait till we get to it. The term archivist means the archivist of the United States. The term former president, when used with respect to presidential records, means the former president during whose term or terms of office such presidential records were created. Okay. So now we are going to go down here to ownership of presidential records. The United States shall reserve and retain complete ownership. The United States shall reserve and retain complete ownership, possession, and control of presidential records, and such records shall be administered in accordance with the provisions of this chapter. Let me repeat that. The United States shall reserve and retain complete ownership, possession, and control of presidential records. Okay? So now we have management and custody of presidential records. Now, this is where it is very, very important to pay attention, because this explains everything. A, through the implementation of records management controls and other necessary actions, the president shall take all such steps as may be necessary to assure that the activities, deliberations, decisions, and policies that reflect the performance of the presidential's constitutional, statutory, and or other official or ceremonial duties are adequately documented, and that such records are preserved and maintained as presidential records pursuant to the requirements of this section and other provisions of law. B, documentary materials produced or received by the president or the president's staff or units or individuals in the executive office of the president, the function of which is to advise or assist the president, shall, to the extent practicable, be categorized as presidential records or personal records upon their creation or receipt and be filed separately. During the president's term of office, the president may dispose of those presidential records of such president that no longer have administrative, historical, informational, or evidence value if number one, the president obtains the views in writing of the archivist concerning the proposed disposal of such presidential records, and the archivist states that the archivist does not intend to take any action under subsection E of this section. So any destruction has to go through the archivist. In the event the archivist notifies the president under subsection C that the archivist does not intend to take action under subsection E, the president may dispose of such presidential records if copies of the disposal schedule are submitted. If copies of the disposal schedule are submitted to the appropriate congressional committees, submitted to the appropriate congressional committees at least 60 calendar days of continuous session of Congress in advance of the proposed disposal date.
You know, that's funny. I don't see ripping up papers and flushing them down the toilet on there. Okay.
No, I don't either.
I just had to point that out.
And this continues on if Congress isn't in section and all that. It still comes down to the archivist shall request the advice of the Committee on Rules and Administration and the Committee on Governmental Affairs of the Senate and the Committee on House Oversight and the Committee on Government Operations of the House of Representatives with respect to any proposed disposal of presidential records whenever the archivist considers that these particular records may be of special interest to the Congress, or consultation with the Congress regarding the disposal of these particular records is in the public interest.
Man.
Okay.
It's amazing what you can do with the internet these days.
I know. F. During a president's term of our office, the archivist may maintain and preserve presidential records on behalf of the president, including records in digital or electronic form. The president shall remain exclusively responsible. The president, during his term, shall remain exclusively responsible for custody, control, and access to such presidential records. The archivist may not disclose any such records, except under direction of the president, until the conclusion of a president's term of office. If a president serves consecutive terms, upon the conclusion of the last term or such other period provided for under Section 2204 of this title. Now, upon the conclusion of a president's term of office, or if a president serves consecutive terms, upon the conclusion of the last term, the archivist of the United States shall assume responsibility for the custody, control, and preservation. Let me repeat that. The archivist, not the president, the archivist of the United States shall assume responsibility for the custody, control, and preservation of, and access to the presidential records of that president. The archivist shall have an affirmative duty to make such records available to the public as rapidly and completely as possible, consistent with the provisions of this chapter. And this goes on to what the archivist will do with the records. Okay? So, all of the questions about the classified records, the president at the end of his term had no right to take any records.
Nope. That's actually the second topic point I was going to bring up. Yeah, they establish the records automatically transfer into the legal custody of the archivist as soon as he leaves office. So the minute he left that door, he no longer owned any of that material. Not a personal gift. I mean, if you would have submitted that in writing, but up until he submits everything in writing to get approval from the archivist, he doesn't own a damn thing that he collected while he was president of the United States.
Now, while he's president, he is responsible for the custody of the records while he's president.
Right.
Okay. But once his term is over, they are no longer his to do what he wants with. Period.
And I mean, somebody's got it in his head, unless he truly believes that. But we've obviously just read it in the first less than 20 minutes of the show, and it's already complete bullshit. And Trump, see, I don't know why he hires lawyers. Like, he got this whole idea about the Presidential Records Act from this guy named Tom Fitton, who runs a website called Judicial Watch, which sounds very official. But the problem is Tom Fitton is not a freaking lawyer. He's not been to law school. He doesn't have a law degree, but somehow they have Trump convinced there's a loophole. I mean, that is airtight, if you ask me. It literally tells you step by step what the president must do with presidential records.
Right. Well, and I think when somebody read it to him, because I don't think he read this. Okay?
No, he doesn't read. The guy doesn't read. The guy, I would not be surprised if they had to do his morning security briefings with puppet shows to keep his attention, for crying out loud.
I think when somebody read it to him, he heard the part where while he's president, he maintains control and custody and gets to do what he wants with them. And I think that's where his brain stopped. He didn't hear anything after that. Okay. So if the whole thing was actually read to the president, which I think when it got to that part, he said, oh, okay, they're all mine. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. On to the next and all that. Where is my McDonald's hamburger?
So he stopped at the part. He stopped reading before it told him what happens after you leave. He's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm president. I get to keep them. He didn't read the part where it says, as soon as you leave, it's not yours anymore. You have to give it back.
Exactly. And when he was talking about Pence, again, this applies to the records that Pence had, because it says vice president and everything has to be turned over to the archivist, you know. When they found records with Pence, come get them. When they found them with Biden, come get them, you know. But when they found them with Trump, it's just like, no, they're mine. They're mine. They're mine. I can declassify them with my mind. They're mine. It's got nothing to do about the classification.
It doesn't at all. They actually didn't even did it even say anything about classified material in there?
No.
It just said records, anything.
Any record, classified or not. All right. And when they start talking about, see, this is why they propagate the classification and that Trump can declassify it with his mind. Then they're trying to say under the Presidential Records Act, I can do what I want with them. They're all mine, which we just read. It is not true. Because once his term of office is over, and this is probably why he's saying it's rigged, he's still president. And if he's still president, then yes, he can maintain control of them.
Okay, if that's his defense, then he's going to prison. I mean, if this is literally the best he's got, and I didn't do anything wrong, and I made a perfect phone call, like those are his defenses, the guy's going to prison. And if his lawyers are dumb enough to go on the air and, like you said, propagate this nonsense, because Fox News is more than happy to let people lie about what is really. I mean, this is not propaganda we're reading. I mean, this is right off the damn government website.
This is
the
United
source.
States
It
Code.
is literally the source.
This is United States Code. This is Title 44. Okay, Chapter 22. So I mean, and here's what amazes me. This is why I get pissed at even the Democratic news media, because all CNN, all MSNBC, all NBC, all any of them had to do was do what I just did.
I know. and yeah, we just use Google and they have millions of dollars of resources at their fingertips. But it's
my question is, why haven't they done it?
They have. They just it's all about ratings with the corporate news stations anymore. I mean, I don't like hardly any of them anymore. I mean, I think the only one I kind of watch is maybe MSNBC, but everybody else is too busy trying to play sides and divide the country.
Right.
Especially
I want to take it a step further. Okay. I know that Jesse Dollemore isn't a stupid person. I know Ben Meiselas isn't a stupid person. I know that David Pakman isn't a stupid person. All of them are, I love all of them. I watch all their shows.
Yeah, okay? So do I.
And none of them have brought this up.
Not once.
Okay. and granted, I love them, but this is the evidence to support what the left has been saying about Trump and to dispel the propaganda put out by the right in relation to Trump on the documents. I mean,
they've all talked about it, but yeah, breaking it down in detail, probably not. No. But I do have a question for you. I think it's important to understand why the Presidential Records Act was even created.
This aspect of it was created about going public. Let me see. Let me go back up to.
I don't really know the specifics of. I mean, I know why it was created and when it was created, but the actual details of it, I think it'd probably be good to go over. You already went over all my talking points, man. You're killing me here. I saw
here we go. It's right here. Upon the conclusion of a president's term of office, or if a president serves consecutive terms upon the conclusion of the last term, the archivist of the United States shall assume responsibility for custody, control, and preservation of and access to the presidential records of that president. The archivist shall have an affirmative duty to make such records available to the public as rapidly and completely as possible, consistent with the provisions of this chapter. Okay.
This was obviously created because of Nixon, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean, this is specifically created to prevent something like that from happening again.
Right. This was done under the Reagan administration to show transparency of the government. So unless it's deemed as classified, here's where classified comes into play. If it's classified, it doesn't have to be made public. So if it's not classified, now it's up to the archivist to make it public access as soon as possible. So that's the whole aspect of the Presidential Records Act, is going from private to public. All of this other stuff has already been written and has been part of the law on how the records are to be maintained by the archivist. The other change in here is that during the presidency of a president, the president now takes responsibility of control and access during their term, their administration of these records, where before it was sent to the archivist. Now, here's the importance of that, okay? Excuse me. When it was all private, then it goes to the archivist. Nothing's going to be made public, okay? But because they were making it public, then the archivist doesn't just get to throw everything out there in the open. The president has control of that. What does he want to make public and what he doesn't want to make public? And if it's not classified, then he can hold it off until the end of his presidency. So then the archivist after the presidency can make anything that the president has said or done during his term that isn't classified public. Where before, when it was all private, it was a process to try to get anything public. So that's where the difference comes in. So the only reason why the president has control of the records during their presidency is so that they can determine what's going to be released to the public and what's not.
And I think the more he's mentioned that, the more people are actually looking it up. Like, because I mean, most people with common sense listen to what he's saying and go, that does not sound right. I'm going to Google that and go, oh, no, he's lying. But this is where the propaganda aspect of this whole Trump regime comes in, because propaganda works because it's repeated over and over and over and over again until some people, if they hear it over and over again, they're just going to automatically start believing it. And let's face facts. Most people aren't like us, they don't go fact check what the news tells them. You know what I mean? They don't go online and go, well, the news just told me this. Maybe I should research that a little bit. Most people don't do that. But now it's gotten to the point where like you almost have to fact check these. And this is why I like the networks like the Midas Touch and David Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen and stuff like that, and Ring of Fire, because they're the ones that do that. You know what I mean? And I wish people would take more time on the independent news networks, because they are breaking down the facts and they are telling the truth. But again, it depends your beliefs. Like everything comes into play when apparently politics has just gone into some kind of dystopian reality where nothing makes sense anymore. But the propaganda part of it bothers me, because this whole movement in this country of the whole, the world, it's like World War II Germany propaganda.
Right. Well, and here's the thing: when it comes to memory, if you have to usually say something 3 times for it to stick. Okay. So
or me, like 8, 9 times. But yeah, go ahead.
the average person.
All right.
It takes about 3 times before something sticks.
So I'm above average then. No, sorry.
So if you repeat the lie 3 times or more, it's going to stick with people. All right. And if you're in the mindset that you want to believe it, it's now registered as a fact. Psychologically, it's registered as a fact. Mm-hmm. So then you believe it. And the more you hear it, the more you're going to believe it. And if you keep hearing it over and over and over again, you're going to believe it. All right.
And you know what? I think maybe I kind of used to be like that, but since I got involved in politics and following all these things, it's really opened my eyes. But I think maybe there was a possibility that I may have been like that, because I used to hate social media. I didn't watch the news. So, I understand that how the brain would do that to you, but.
Right. And then there's people like myself and like you, we hear it once, twice, 3 times. We don't register it as a truth or a lie. We just simply register it as something that's being said, and now we research it because because we want to know what the truth is, and sometimes we have to reread it to comprehend it. Now, the when you said that we were going to do the Presidential Records Act, I'm like, yes, I have read this multiple times. I know what the truth is. So, and there's more to this and all that. We only covered through 2204. So let me bring this back up real quick. We covered definitions, ownership of presidential records, management and custody of presidential records, and restriction on access to presidential records.
I'd like to point out 2208 vice presidential records.
Right.
Are
So
also covered.
if you want to know more about what goes on and know more about the Presidential Records Act, go to exceptions to restriction on access, regulations, vice presidential records. And again, this is going to explain, where
Actually, can you go to vice presidential records?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
Because that is another thing that Trump says. Oh, Biden, he was vice president. He had no right to have those documents. So I think that's important to also point out, because that's another talking point. And if you guys go online and you do any go look up rallies. Okay. Rallies is where you really see how the propaganda trickles its way down into the population. But go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I probably should have been doing this from the beginning.
Yeah, that's fine.
Vice presidential records shall be subject to the provisions of this chapter in the same manner as presidential records. I'll repeat that line. Vice presidential records shall be subject to the provisions of this chapter in the same manner as presidential records. The duties and responsibilities of the vice president with respect to vice presidential records shall be the same as the duties and responsibilities of the president under this chapter, except section 2208 with respect to presidential records. The authority of the archivist with respect to vice presidential records shall be the same as the authority of the archivist under this chapter with respect to presidential records, except that the archivist may, when the archivist determines that it is in the public interest, enter into an agreement for the deposit of vice presidential records in a non-federal archival depository. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed to authorize the establishment of separate archival depositories for such vice presidential records.
Amazing. So yeah, that blows that argument right out of the water. So
yes. And I would like to welcome Esteban.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey guys.
7 minutes later than usual. For those of you who don't know, Esteban's always 27 minutes late.
I love you too.
Hi, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, Paul.
Hello. So did you happen to catch the first half?
I got in right in the middle of you reading and explaining that part.
Okay. We explained how the president, when his term of office is over, all presidential records are the property of the United States and are turned over to the archivist.
Correct.
So we just went through the Presidential Records Act 2201 through 2204, and we just did 2207 with the vice presidential records. And I encourage everybody to go on and read the other parts. It's going to break some other things down so you have an understanding about some of the restrictions and access and what the process actually is for obtaining access to the presidential records. So
that's right.
No.
Yes. So we basically debunked everything that Trump has said.
That's great, because someone needs to send him a copy of your of this podcast, because for some reason everybody else knows the recognition of the Presidential Act except for him.
Actually, I got an idea. I know how we can get it to him. Anybody that's good at animation, they can make a cartoon that explains the Presidential Records Act. Maybe that will help explain it to Donald Trump. But I think there's another thing that I think we could talk about on there that I wanted to focus on, was the destruction. How elaborate of a process it is to destroy official records. And rumor has it, allegedly, that this guy was just ripping up stuff left and right and flushing it down the toilet.
Flushing it down the toilet, burning it, and in the White House fireplace by Mark Meadows.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that, I mean, destruction of government property, destruction of official records. There's so many layers to this that he has violated, and yet he uses this as his number one defense.
Yeah.
I'm covered under the Presidential Records Act.
If I may, in my
Yes.
opinion, this is good for the American public. Why I say that? Because one of the main reasons in back in 2015, 2016 that people said they were voting for him was because he was a businessman, and he was a successful businessman, right? However, they didn't care to dig inside the truth behind his success, which was multiple bankruptcies and basically doing what he wanted to do with his own businesses, which now is something he doesn't seem to quite understand he cannot do as the president of the United States, because it's not, the United States is not your business. You work for the people. So ripping things up and burning things and all of that, that's what he did and got away with as a private entity businessman. And now he feels he can still do that as the president or ex-president.
It's funny you say that, because I was actually starting to say at the beginning of the show that I don't think he understands the concept that he was a government employee for those 4 years. He did not work for Donald Trump.
I think the word understand is not the right word. He understands. He doesn't accept it.
Right.
That could be it too.
There you go.
He wants to be king. He doesn't want to be president. He wants to be King Trump.
Yes. And he doesn't want to make America great again, because again, America is already great. We are the greatest country in the world. We're not perfect. Nobody is. We will never be perfect, but we're the greatest country in the world. He doesn't want to make America great again. He wants to reform America under a dictatorship with him as king,
where he can get away with everything he wants to get away with. Literally he wants to have, I mean, I did a video about this on my Instagram, I think, and on TikTok. He literally went as far as to get a cost estimate, or at least told people to get a cost estimate on how much it would cost to build a trench along the entire border, fill it with snakes and alligators, and then put a wall with spikes on the top, and I quote, that would pierce human flesh. This is who you guys want to put in charge of nuclear fucking weapons? Are you guys out of your minds? The man is deranged. He's unstable. And I honestly think he is way more whacked out than everybody's thinking he is. I think his staff is quietly trying to keep him out of the spotlight and just give him a couple months. But you see these last few interviews, the guy's lost his mind. He's out of it. I mean, he was talking about he won an election against Obama, and Biden was going to lead us into World War II.
But have you seen his newest interview with Megyn Kelly?
Yes, it was.
She tried the best that she could to get the truth out of him, and you can tell what she was saying. She believed herself.
It's funny you mentioned that. We played the video, part of the Megyn Kelly part in the beginning of the show. So
wow,
the buzz always on the same wave.
Yeah, he still danced around it. He still believes he kept saying that that Jack Smith, they're not looking into the Presidential Act. When I heard that, I said, wait, what? These people must have read that Presidential Act like 100 times. What are you talking about? They are aware of who they are dealing with. How are you saying they didn't read the Presidential Act? That's ridiculous.
I watched the interview. I mean, this guy crumbles with the simplest questions. I watched the interview where they asked him literally, she goes, and I need these interviewers need to stop calling him Mr. President. Okay, he's not Mr. President. He's ex-President Trump. Stop it. And they asked him, Mr. President, did you tell people to move boxes? And he goes, I'm not going to answer that question. But I would totally be allowed to do it under the Presidential Records Act. Right. I'm like, his lawyers are home like Bam!
So he just
Oh
answered
my
the question.
God. Totally just answered the question after he said, I'm not going to tell you that.
In regards to what you just said about being called Mr. President, I'm not mad at that because they're all called Mr. President. Jimmy Carter is still called Mr. President. Where I agree with you on that is that he is the only Mr. President that's been indicted 4 times and has 91 counts against him. So I feel he doesn't deserve that title anymore. I don't call him that. He's Donald Trump.
Well,
I can't tell you what I call him.
I'm going to give you a little pushback. I'm going to give you a little pushback. And as much as I detest Trump, he's still, because he was president, he's still Mr. President. And I don't like him. And I agree he's undeserving of the title, but he was president of the United States.
It is true.
How about this?
That is.
He disgraced the office. He disgraced the duties. He disgraced the country as president. He's still Mr. President because he held that title.
Just think of this. For the rest of America, as long as America lasts, there's going to be a portrait of Donald Trump hanging in the White House.
And there should be, because, again, he was president. And
yeah, but
when you go through the list of all the presidents, all of them have that photo up there. Whether they were good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter.
It's true.
They were in that position. They represented this country, for better or for worse. They represented this country. Donald Trump represented the United States of America, not in a good way, and not in a way that I agree with, but he still represented this country.
And that's very true. I'll tell you, that is the one thing on the day that Hillary Clinton lost, I teared. I teared. That's because she lost. I teared for the very reason of what Paul just said. It hit me immediately that now and forever, Donald Trump will be part of the American history. And that's what I teared for. That forever, when you're speaking about the White House and the presidents and all of that, you must mention him somewhere in there. And that's why I teared.
Yep.
It's sad.
Yes. Yes.
Trying to find
mic drop. Yes. It is. It is. and you know,
here, this is. I mean, but look, this is. I'll give you a video here. This is what this guy said on Labor Day. Okay, you ready? Let me go ahead and.
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, hold on. Let me upload the file. I just want to give you guys an example of like how deranged this stuff is. Now, of course, I lost it.
Now, it better not be anything that gets me banned, okay?
No, of course not.
I'm not worried about being demonetized because I'm not monetized yet. So I don't.
No, you know what? Esteban calmed me down a bit. So, you know, I'm not as bad as I used to be. I don't go as hard in the paint as I used to be. Here it is right here.
All right.
Sorry, I have like 100 videos I got to look through.
Yep. Go ahead. Oh, wait. Do I have to do it? There we go.
You have to play it. You didn't give me admin access.
Oh. And your bosses are leading you right down the tubes. You shouldn't pay your fees. They get these big fees from all of their workers. And it doesn't matter how bad they are, they'll endorse a Democrat, even though the Democrat's selling you down the tubes. You shouldn't pay those dues. You should not pay your dues because they're selling you to hell. You're going to be going to hell. You're not going to have any jobs. All those cars are going to be made in China. Every one of them.
That's the guy you want leading the country, telling we're going to hell. Like not like Esteban said, you should be going around. This is the greatest country. I'm going to make it even better. Not we're going to hell. It's going to be World War III. Like he's using fear tactics to get votes, and it's not working though anymore. He's slowly but steadily losing support. If you look at any videos online of his rallies, they are maybe 25% of the size as they were in 2015 and 20. You know what I mean?
What's happening is that he his supporters is truly being downsized to the actual MAGA supporters. So
yeah, the second fans.
Right. So any sort of Republicans that did not consider themselves MAGA supporters, but they were they were on Trump's side because he's a conservative. Those Republicans are slowly drifting away because it's too much. It's too much. Say what you want to say about Trump. It is too much, and the world is finally realizing that he is creating the situations that he's in. These are all of these indictments are all criminal charges that he did not have to have if he listened. Period.
Right.
I like to point out that like politicians have always done this, I've learned, but Trump has really taken this to a whole nother level. Actually, the whole GOP, the MAGA GOP, have taken this to another level of getting citizens to vote against their best interests. I mean, you're talking about rich elites convincing people that they have their best interests at heart. Don't be so freaking naive. I mean, come on, people. Me and Paul talked about this before we took our break. This country should have been about rich versus poor from the start, not skin color versus skin color, gender versus gender. Rich people have literally destroyed and ripped this country apart and used the rest of us to make their money.
Right. Let me break this down because I'm going to push back on something Esteban said, that the United States is the greatest country. Okay. And, and here's why I'm going to push back. Now, I love my country. I think for me, I wouldn't want to be in any other country because I think the United States has the greatest potential of any country. Okay.
And that's what I mean.
Okay. Because right now there's other countries that are better than us. They're better on us on so many levels. The only thing that the United States is still number one in is we have the most people incarcerated. Okay. So by definition, that means that we are the most criminalized country in the world. But I know that's not true because we have a lot of issues. It's something that Jeremy just brought up. We have lots of systemic discrimination issues, whether it's racism, whether it's misogyny, bigotry, xenophobia, ageism, classism. We have all of these aspects that we as a country have to work out. But here's what I want you to think about, because when they talk about like the Russian interference, all right, when you have a country that has already got these divides in it because it allows certain things like racism or bigotry to exist, okay, that allows a country like Russia to put a wedge in there and create and make that divide greater.
Right.
Okay. So our country has allowed this infiltration. We have allowed it because of what we allow in this country. All right. So when you start looking at our elections and the division that other countries are working on sowing, okay, I want you to really think about this. In 2020, in that election, there were 155.5 million votes cast. Okay. Biden had 81.3 million votes. Donald Trump had 74.2 million. Both of them received approximately 39 million votes from their party.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the rest was,
Independents. Where Biden had 39 million votes from Democrats, he also had close to 40 million from independents. Donald Trump had 39 million from Republicans, 21 million from independents. So I want you to really, really think about that. I want you to think about what's going to happen in this next election. Who are the independents going to vote for? I want you to look at people like Cornel West that's running for the Green Party.
Right.
I want you to look at Joe Manchin, who's going to be running for No Labels.
Man, don't even get me started on them.
I want you to look at the Libertarians. They're going to have a candidate out there. I don't know if Forward's going to have somebody out there. But what you're looking at is what other countries are doing. They try to eliminate a duopoly. They don't want a duopoly. They want multiple people from multiple different backgrounds to come in and say, this is what we like. This is what we want. They want that diversity in their politics, in their government. Because when you have that diversity in your politics and your government, you're going to be able to do more for your people. And right now we have a bad duopoly here. We have Democrats and Republicans, and most of them are corporatized. I have a show on Thursdays on Who Wrote the Bill, and I'm breaking down the bills. And I want people to know that there's no difference when it comes to corporate sponsorship. Okay? Our government's supposed to be for us. It's supposed to do for us, not corporations. All right? And this is why when people start worrying about what's going to happen this next election, when Cornel West continues to run, they don't like the idea of Marianne Williamson running in a primary. Again, she's not hurting President Biden in any way. She's running a primary against him. Okay? It's still Democratic. That's what this country is supposed to be about. Is if you have a president that you don't like in your party that's in office and you want somebody better, you should have that right to voice your opinion that, hey, I don't want Biden anymore. I want Marianne Williamson. I want RFK. Now, I don't like RFK. He's not my choice.
I think he's going to be Trump's running mate.
I like Marianne Williamson. And in the primary, I will be voting for Marianne. But if it looks like Marianne can beat Biden, I might actually vote for Biden. And here's why. I don't think Marianne Williamson can beat a Republican.
I agree.
I don't know much about her yet, so
Biden
depends on the Republican, though, doesn't it? Or
I don't think Marianne Williamson can beat any Republican. I love her. Trust me. I think she's the greatest person running for the position right now. But I don't think she can beat a Republican, any of them.
the GOP is not going to pick a good candidate. They're so up Donald Trump's asshole that they've lost focus. I mean, they're not. They should have broken away from him months ago.
It doesn't matter who the Republicans run. I'm trying to make a point here on this. Okay, Republicans come out to vote and vote for their candidate, whether they like them or not.
See, that's the biggest problem.
Democrats,
right there,
on the other hand, when Bernie didn't get the nomination over Hillary Clinton, what did they do? They either didn't vote, they voted for a Libertarian or a Green Party, or they voted for Trump because they were pissed. There's a different reaction between the two parties. Now, something that Esteban brought up is that the Republican Party right now is fractured.
Yeah.
You have a lot of Republicans that are going to the independent side. I think in 2020, I think a lot of Republicans registered as an independent and voted for Biden. I think a lot of those independents, of those 39 million independents, I think a lot of those were former Republicans. Not a majority, just a lot of them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Okay? So you have to really look at a lot of different things here. That the Republican Party is now frustrated with what's going on with Trump. And this episode is evidence of this. Okay? You have Trump on Meet the Press talking about how he can do anything he wants with presidential records. They have to come to me and say, please, Mr. President, please. Right. Okay? And we know it's bullshit.
Not just please, Mr. President, but what will you do for me if I give you these records?
Right. And I just broke down, Jeremy and we just broke down the Presidential Records Act and gave you the truth. And there are still going to be Republicans, especially those that support Trump, that are going to say, I don't care. I don't believe it's real. I don't believe that is part of the United States Code. And if it is, it's wrong.
Right.
Because my president said that he could do it. And if he said it, then he can do it.
Well, you know what? Donald Trump is the one who made this. Didn't he make the punishment worse for improperly having classified documents?
Right. Right. But I want you to think about the mentality of these people and why there's a fracturing in the Republican Party now, because the people that are in the Republican Party that are like, oh no, man, Trump F up and we have to distance ourselves. And that's what they're doing. You got Mitt Romney retiring. Now, I like Mitt Romney. I don't care what anybody says.
I do too.
I like
Yeah,
Mitt Romney.
He's all right.
I loved him, John McCain, when he was here. I like Chris Christie. I don't like.
I like Chris Christie now. When he was
yeah.
Jersey governor, he was horrible. He was a Trump, basically. He was a Trump. His attitude was he was nasty. He was a nasty man as governor of New Jersey.
And I personally don't know that. I haven't reviewed that. So I can't say yes or no. I can't agree or disagree with you. I don't know that personally. What I see now of Chris Christie, I like. Not that I would vote for him. Okay.
Right.
Not that I would vote for him. I'm still leaning on the left. Okay. I'm an independent that leans left because I believe in humanitarian values first. That's my democratic philosophy. Thus the title of this show, Democratic Philosophy. And it's not about being a Democrat. It's about democracy.
I think, honestly, and people think I'm crazy too, but I think Chris Christie is the only viable candidate that the Republican Party has. He's the only one willing to go through Trump. Everybody else is tap dancing around him. And I believe, at least now, that Chris Christie sees what's happening with the Republican Party and he's not happy with it. And maybe he can save the Republican Party if they elect him. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think maybe it's beyond saving at this point because of Trump.
I wouldn't mind seeing Joe Walsh get in there. I would love to see Joe Walsh get in there. I've interviewed Joe Walsh. I've talked with Joe Walsh. I like Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh is a good guy. He's got integrity. I don't agree with all of his policies or anything like that. I even, threw a few hard balls at him when I interviewed him and all that. And we could respectfully disagree on some of these policies that I like that he doesn't, and vice versa. But I think he is probably one of the most honest people that have come from the right. No, Joe Walsh.
Joe Walsh.
Yeah. And I would like to see Joe Walsh get in it, because if Joe Walsh, I personally feel if Joe Walsh got in there, I think that he could actually, I think he could beat Trump. I think Joe Walsh could beat Trump.
Now, can I give you my viewpoint on the whole situation? And I guess this is my philosophical viewpoint of the whole situation. I think that, our democracy has been pretty strong for a while now. So I think that this is a test of our democracy.
Oh, yeah.
And
for sure.
It's pass or fail. It is literally, this is a pass or fail scenario. Okay. If we wake people up, and I think this whole scenario has gotten people interested in democracy, what the Constitution really says. You know what I mean? People are really starting to get woke, as I always say. You know what I mean? They're really starting to look things up. So I think if we get people to wake up and vote correctly, that our democracy could come out of this stronger than ever. And that's my hope. But unfortunately, we're going to have to dredge through a lot of shit to get there. And It's going to be a fight. It's not going to be an easy. It's not going to be an easy vault. You know what I mean? We're going to have to really hold together on this one if we want to.
I believe if we can get past this next election, 2024, we definitely have a chance of saving democracy. I also believe every year that goes by that we get more and more Gen Zs involved, in the long run is going to be detrimental to the Republican Party. I believe these young people that we are teaching and training, so to speak, about democracy, they're not going to just vote until democracy wins and then jump off the train. They're going to keep going, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I feel in the long run, if we can get past next year's election and we have a Democratic president, or actually all three of the executive branches after 2024, I think the Republicans will start to realize how much of a mistake that they've made of trying to become an authoritative state or a dictatorship. It's going to work 100% against them, because it's going to bring so many more Democrats and independents into the fold. And once that happens, it will give us the majorities in all three of the houses, which in turn will allow them to create more rules and laws that will help Democrats, so to speak, like voting rights, and possibly expanding the Supreme Court.
I'll throw something else in there that I think will help
Yes, and then I want to
democracy.
hear what Professor Paul has to say.
Yes, I just want to real quick. I think a lot of people aren't taking into account the massive amount of Gen Z that are going to be eligible to vote between now and the election.
Yeah.
And that's a massive chunk. I mean, we're talking probably over 10 million people that are going to be eligible to vote between now and the next election. So that is another factor.
And you got to look at Taylor Smith and all. I just saw it on our Taylor Swift.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, Taylor Swift on Pac-Man the other night and all that, on how she's getting people registered. I'm gonna push back a little bit on both of you and all that. Jeremy, you said vote correctly. There is no voting correctly.
Well, when I say vote correctly, like vote for the party that at least has the people's interests at heart and are following through on their actions. That's what I mean. Vote correctly.
You have to look at what somebody might feel is correct is more of an authoritarian type government. You know, they might think that what the Republicans are pushing is correct.
Right.
So my thought process on it is vote for who you believe is going to serve the country the best. And if you think authoritarianism is what's best, then obviously you're going to be voting on the right.
I think he said.
And if you think that people having more freedoms and more rights and being treated equally is for the best, you're going to be voting on the left. So that's what that comes down to. The thing I'm going to push back on, Esteban, is expanding the Supreme Court. And as much as I would love to expand the Supreme Court, it's not in the best interest of our government to do so. And here's why. If we expand it from 9 to say 13, give it a Democratic poll, when the Republicans hold all three positions, what's to stop them from expanding it to 17? Then we get control and we expand it to 21. And then they expand it to 25. And then we expand it to 29. You can't do that. It's got to stay at the 9. And we have to hold those that are on the Supreme Court accountable. And I think that's what we need to do. We have people on the Supreme Court right now that are enjoying the spoils of rich corporate owners, and they're signing off on law that supports these people that are giving them things and taking them on yacht rides and stuff like that. We have to hold the court accountable.
How do we do that? This is a court that has no term limits. This is a court
lifetime appointment.
There's really nothing that you can do. They can be impeached, but don't you need a majority of all three branches of the Senate and the House to be able to do that? So how do you hold them accountable?
Yes, that is.
You have to have a supermajority.
But here's what we have to do. We have to talk to people and tell people to get out there and vote. It comes back to voting. And I know the Republicans are doing what they can to try to suppress it, because they know if everybody truly got to vote, and everybody did vote, Republicans would start losing offices that they hold left and right. Okay. And that's why they try to suppress voting rights every chance they get, because it's getting to that point where people are tired of a lot of the fascist aspects that certain people bring on the right. All right. I mean, take like Lauren Boebert and her hypocrisy. She preaches family values. She goes into a theater and gets filled up by a Democrat who owns a gay bar that, you know, the very things that she's preaching against is who she's going out on a date with and is being very public. Okay. People are getting tired of the hypocrisy that the right presents. All right.
Yes.
And if people get out there and start voting, and like Jeremy said, Gen Z coming up, there's going to be a lot more. We got Taylor Swift promoting it. It comes down to that. And we have to hold the Senate. And if we lose the presidency, we have to hold the House. I mean, we have to get the House. We have to have 2 of the 3. Okay? Because if we lose the presidency, the only way to keep things in balance, we must have the House and the Senate. Because if we lose the presidency, if you haven't read Project 2025, the executive branch is going to take power of this country. Now, if you know anything about how government works, it's the legislative branch that has the power in this country. They write the laws. The executive branch enforces the legislative branch. And when the people decide that a law is unconstitutional, the Supreme Court decides whether it's constitutional or not. That's how we have our checks and balances, and that's how we're supposed to operate. If we give the power to the executive branch, the legislative branch means nothing. It's now a puppet to the executive branch. And if it's a puppet to the executive branch, then we don't have a democracy. We don't even have a republic. We have an authoritarian dictatorship. We are not supposed to be that.
Right.
And Project 2025 that Jeremy and I talked about last week highlights that. So that's where we have to continue to come forward. This is why I am vote blue no matter who. Even though I don't like Biden, okay, I have issues with Biden, and Biden has surprised me. He has put out some more progressive legislation, supported more progressive legislation than I ever thought he would. He has surprised me, but I still think he is a corporate politician. I would rather see a more progressive person in there, but this is where the phrase that I hate, the lesser of the 2 evils. This is why I hate the duopoly, because I think we should have more people running. I think we should have better selections. But with the system that we have in place right now, I will be voting for Biden. Because if I don't vote for Biden, then if the other side gets into power, it might be the last presidential election we see in this country. I truly believe that. Now, there might be people, Paul, you're fear-mongering, blah, blah, blah. No. Call it what you want. This is how I see it, and this is how I feel it will go.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. And for the people that say that, oh, you're fear-mongering, first of all, again, is that not what Trump does every day of his life to everyone? Trump and fellow Republican leaders, is that not what they do? They fearmonger their own people and Americans into what they want them to believe. That's the first thing. The second thing is that okay, so you're fear-mongering into people, being fearful that democracy is going to be gone. So what do you want? What do you want us to do? You want us to just leave it alone so that democracy possibly can be gone, and then we have no recourse? There's no way that we could turn around and head back. No, we're not going to do that. So we're going to scream bloody murder and let everybody know this is going to happen if you don't wake up. This is what's going to happen. And once this happens, it's a wrap.
Yep. Jeremy, you're still on mute.
Yeah, still on mute. Damn it. Sorry, my dogs are barking. Again, so the last thing I'll say, and then I have to actually get going here, is if you want to see a comparison and decide who to vote for between Biden and Trump, Look at the comparison of the UN speeches that people are
Oh, yes.
posting online.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Trump got laughed at by the entire room. Okay. And Biden got a freaking standing ovation. If that is not the most stark contrast of the differences in leadership skills or qualities, or just being a good person, just go after you get off the show. Why? Go look at it. It is perfect.
Exactly. All right. Closing thoughts. Jeremy, closing thought?
Oh, that was my closing thought.
Okay.
Esteban, be smart. Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm gonna keep saying this now. This is kind of my thing. I didn't learn this in I didn't realize this in 2016, and of course Trump won. But not voting for Biden is the same thing as voting for Donald Trump. So please, even if you don't like either one of them, and you know Trump is an asshole, don't just not vote. Just vote for Biden, like Paul said, just vote blue this time around. I mean, it's the only do what's best for the country. I think, Paul, that's one of the things I wanted to highlight. You said vote for who's best for the country, not your own selfish needs. Nobody gives a shit about your personal needs. You take care of those yourself. You vote for who's best for the approximately 330 whatever million people that are in this country. There, that's my closing thought.
All right. Esteban.
I just say vote every Republican out of office.
Oh.
I've been saying that in almost every tweet on Twitter or X, and I will continue to say that. I like Paul. I have always considered myself an independent because I don't feel like I need to. I need to adhere to any political party's terms or rules. I'm going to vote for whoever the hell I want to vote for, regardless of their party. If I like them, that's who I'm voting for. Until now, it's not about party anymore. It's about democracy. It's about fighting for our rights, our freedoms that we're going to lose if Republicans continue to take over more and more of these positions. So my stance now, today, and every day up until election 2024 is to vote every Republican out. I want to remind your viewers that Virginia voting is up this year, in November, and all of their seats are up for grabs. Okay, let's not forget what has conspired these last couple of months with a Democrat, which I like to say a fake Democrat, to get into office and then switched over to Republican so they can have a supermajority and veto everything from their great governor. All of those seats are up for grabs in November. If you're from Virginia, please get involved. Please spread the word. And if you didn't like what's been going on, please go and vote. And that's it.
All right. Thank you. Just a reminder, fear-mongering is you promoting a fear that you yourself do not believe is true. It's putting out information to make people scared of something that could not happen.
Right.
It's just, you make them think it can happen. I've read Project 2025 and it scares the hell out of me. And if Republicans support that, people like me, people like Jeremy, people like Esteban can all be imprisoned.
Yeah, we'll be targets.
Read Project 2025. With that said, I love you guys. I love everyone out there. And remember, be kind.
Be kind.
Happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.
Amen.